Hello, this is Dr. Grande. Today's question is, can I analyze the case of Matthew Farwell and Sandra Birchmore? Just a reminder, I'm not diagnosing anybody in this video, only speculating about what could be happening in a situation like this. If you enjoyed this video, please like it, subscribe to my channel, and consider supporting me on Patreon. I will put the link to Patreon in the description for this video. First, I'll look at the background of this case, move to the timeline of the crime, then offer my analysis. Matthew Gregory Farwell was born in October 1985 and lived in the town of northeastern Massachusetts. He dropped out of high school during his junior year after having attendance issues. Matthew had participated in the Staunton Police Officers Academy. This is a quasi-military educational program for young people interested in a law enforcement career. Allegedly, he was caught impersonating a police officer and pulling over motor vehicles during his time in this academy. After having a series of low-level jobs, Matthew earned his high school equivalency diploma in 2004. This same year, he joined the Army and was trained as an explosives expert. In 2008, Matthew became an officer in the Wellesley Police Department. In 2012, he was hired by the Staunton Police Department. He became an instructor for the Police Explorers. Again, he had participated in this program when he was a teenager. In March 2010, a girl named Sandra Marie Birchmore joined the Police Explorers Academy. Matthew was her instructor. Sandra had been born on May 13, 1997, so she was 12 years old. She remained in this program until 2016, when both her mother and her grandmother died. She lived with an aunt for a few years. In October 2020, Sandra started working for a school in nearby Sharon. In December 2020, she moved into an apartment in Canton, Massachusetts. Now moving to the timeline of the crime. On February 4, 2021, one of Sandra's coworkers called the police because Sandra failed to show up to work. This led to a welfare check at Sandra's apartment. When the police arrived at 11:46 a.m., they found Sandra's body in a bedroom. She was seated on the floor with a duffel bag strap tied around her neck. The strap was connected to a closet doorknob. It was clear that Sandra had been dead for a few days. In May 2021, the medical examiner determined that Sandra was the one who caused her death. This determination did not prevent the police from investigating further. Here is what they found during the course of their investigation. On October 28, 2012, Matthew sent Sandra a friend request on Facebook. Again, at this time, Matthew was an instructor in the Police Explorers program, and Sandra was a participant. In April 2013, Matthew and Sandra started having a sexual relationship. Matthew was 27, Sandra was 15. In Massachusetts, the age of consent is 16. Matthew and Sandra continued having sex all the way until her death. On multiple occasions in 2020 and in 2021, Matthew engaged in sexual activity with Sandra even though he was on duty as a police officer. On October 5, 2020, an individual, referred to as Person 1 in court documents, told Sandra that Matthew's wife was pregnant with the couple's third child. The baby was due in February 2021. Sandra was not happy about this situation. She told Matthew that he needed to have unprotected sex with her so that she could conceive a child. In exchange, Sandra would not tell anybody about his crimes. She was well aware that their activity before the age of 16 represented a crime. Sandra also recognized that Matthew having sex with her while on duty was illegal. Matthew agreed to Sandra's terms, although they each had a different understanding about how much sex would occur. Sandra thought the sex would be more frequent than Matthew did. On December 28, 2020, Sandra sent a message to Matthew informing him that she was pregnant. She also sent him a photograph of a poster that she made indicating they were going to be parents. Matthew responded by writing, quote, "I literally have nothing to say right now. How could you express that in text when I said I don't appreciate it?" unquote. Throughout their relationship, Matthew had made it clear that certain topics should not be discussed in text messages. The couple continued to exchange text messages about the pregnancy. Matthew wrote, "Okay, well, we need to talk then." Sandra responded, "No blank. That's obvious." Later in the exchange, Matthew wrote, "I am mad. You act like you gave anyone a choice." Sandra responded, "So you didn't have a choice?" Matthew suggested that, as usual, she was doing whatever she wanted. At this point, Sandra wrote, quote, "All I did was say, 'Can I have it?' You said, 'Have what?' And I said, 'You know what I'm asking you for,' and stood up and said, 'Yeah.' You've been doing that. You mad? She's due in February, and I am in September, and you don't know how you're gonna be there for both of us. And you need to be there during labor for me too, because your kid should matter." Unquote. Matthew responded, "You are truly the worst person on the face of the earth." After Sandra threatened to expose the truth about Matthew's criminal behaviors, Matthew responded, quote, "You honestly have absolutely no idea how to treat people. I have blanking bent over backwards for you. Now you want to act like this was some free will decision. You have threatened me from the word go. If I didn't do and give you what you wanted, you would ruin me. I made a deal with you, and you changed the terms at every turn." Unquote. On December 29, 2020, Matthew and Sandra met in person and talked. After the meeting, Sandra sent a text message to Matthew referring to physical violence. She indicated that she was uncomfortable, stressed out, and scared because she thought he was going to hit her. Sandra told an individual, referred to in court documents as Person 2, that Matthew told her he wished she would just die and he wanted nothing to do with the baby. Matthew put Sandra in a headlock and grabbed a cell phone from her hand. 10 days before her death, Sandra told an individual, referred to as Person 3, that Matthew had pushed her to the ground after she showed him a fetal sonogram. Person 3 advised Sandra to leave Matthew, but Sandra said Matthew had been a big part of her life for several years. In early January 2021, Sandra communicated with Matthew about what their future with a child would look like. She indicated that she would not complain about holidays, but, quote, "I would like you to come a few days before Christmas and Easter so you can see what they get from me, and I don't want you to leave them out." Unquote. On January 20, 2021, Person 2 called the Stoughton Police Department and mentioned the sexual relationship between Matthew and Sandra. Matthew was pretty upset about this. He sent a message to Sandra which read, "Dude, your blanking friend called my job." Later he indicated that Sandra had no idea how bad this was and wrote, quote, "I literally can't believe this is even real life. Like, what else do I have to worry about now? Which other friend will do something tomorrow?" Unquote. 3 days later, on January 23, Matthew asked Sandra for a key to her apartment. On the next day, January 24, she told him that she had his key. Sandra also gave Matthew the passcode to the apartment building's front door. Sandra communicated with a friend referred to as Person 9 that same day, writing, quote, "He'll be around as long as I keep a secret and don't tell anybody," unquote. She also mentioned how she had the upper hand in the situation, but she did not want to be that kind of person. Sandra mentioned that Matthew had examined her closet and bathroom, which she thought was weird. On February 1, 2021, a snowstorm hit the area, therefore schools shut down. Sandra was sent home from work early. On surveillance video, she could be seen arriving at her apartment building and getting in the elevator. Once in her apartment, Sandra sent messages to Matthew indicating that she wanted him to buy clothing the child could wear home from the hospital. At 5:01 p.m., Sandra went to the apartment building lobby and accepted the delivery of a DoorDash order. At 5:33 p.m., Sandra could be seen stepping outside the apartment building to retrieve a snow brush before returning. This is the last time she would ever be seen alive. At 9:14 p.m., Matthew was captured on video entering Sandra's apartment building. He was wearing a face mask and had a hood pulled over his head. At 9:43 p.m., Matthew left the apartment building. The police believed that Matthew murdered Sandra during that final visit to her apartment, but staged the scene to look like Sandra was responsible. Matthew resigned from the police department on April 1, 2022, and became a truck driver. On August 27, 2024, he was arrested and charged with murder. Now moving to my analysis. Matthew may have committed a number of serious crimes involving Sandra, but that doesn't necessarily mean that he killed her. Let's take a look at the evidence both for and against the idea that Matthew was guilty of murder, starting with the inculpatory factors. Matthew violated the law when he had sex with Sandra in April 2013. Later, when she was over the age of consent, Matthew broke the law by having sex on duty. Sandra was aware that she could use these crimes to blackmail Matthew. This is exactly what she did after becoming upset, and she ultimately became pregnant with Matthew's child. Sandra reframed her blackmail effort as if it was no big deal, and Matthew accused her of changing the terms of their arrangement. Based on statements Sandra made to other people, Matthew was physically violent toward her, and he wished that she was dead. Matthew did not want to memorialize some of the communication in text form. Sandra repeatedly ignored these warnings. She was being casual about something that Matthew took very seriously. Matthew Farwell knew that he wouldn't fare well in prison. Despite promising to keep the secret, Sandra was telling her acquaintances about the relationship. From Matthew's perspective, he may have felt like Sandra was taunting him with her carelessness, constantly reminding him that she now had the power in the relationship. Matthew knew that he would get caught if this continued. From their communication, it's clear that Sandra and Matthew had different expectations about a future together. Sandra possessed an abundance of enthusiasm about her pregnancy, which was not shared by Matthew. She was interested in baby photographs, how to manage the holidays, and even having Matthew's name on the birth certificate. Not long before Sandra's death, Matthew examined her closet and bathroom. The closet doorknob was the same one involved in the fatality. 3 days before Sandra's body was discovered, Matthew visited her apartment for 29 minutes. He was wearing a face mask, but had previously resisted any mandates involving face masks, only using them when he was required to by work. Sandra's cell phone recorded movement just 3 minutes before Matthew left the apartment building. This was the last time her phone was active. The clothing Sandra was wearing was the same clothing from when she was last captured on video. 2 days after Sandra's body was found, Matthew was interviewed by the police. He admitted that he had been involved in a sexual relationship with Sandra, but falsely claimed the relationship did not start until 2020. There are many indications that Sandra was planning on remaining alive. In the days leading up to her death, she planned a gender reveal, a pregnancy announcement, and arranged to get baby photographs. Sandra had made arrangements for the care of her cats while in the hospital, but her cats were found in the apartment with her. Furthermore, there was evidence that Sandra died in the middle of cleaning laundry. The first medical examiner indicated that Sandra was responsible for her death. However, 2 other medical experts later determined that she was murdered. 3 days after being interviewed by the police, Matthew searched if messages could be recovered using the software that the police had access to. He then deleted the search from the phone. Moving to the exculpatory factors, no physical evidence connected Matthew to Sandra's death, no DNA, no fingerprints, nothing at all. In May 2020, less than a year before her death, Sandra was taken to a hospital after telling someone she wanted to harm herself. Sandra did not appear to be particularly stable as far as her mental health and did not make good decisions. For example, she was blackmailing a physically violent police officer. Clearly, she and Matthew had different expectations about the relationship. It is not out of the realm of possibility that Sandra did something drastic to herself. Maybe her final conversation with Matthew pushed her over the edge. When considering the evidence in this case, do I think that Matthew is guilty of murder? Yes, in my opinion, he is guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. What do I think happened in this case? This is just a theory, my opinion. Matthew was immature, self-centered, excitement-seeking, dominant, fearless, cold, callous, manipulative, deceptive, impulsive, irresponsible, had a sense of entitlement, and was exceedingly creepy. When he first met Sandra, she was in a vulnerable position because she trusted police officers. By committing offenses against Sandra, Matthew affected the way she processed information and managed relationships. The mistreatment and the manipulation taught her that relationships were meant to be exploited. She learned to have a lack of empathy similar to the deficit observed in Matthew. Unable to see things from Matthew's perspective, Sandra started blackmailing him. To her, this made sense. This is how relationships worked. Everybody took what they could. It was not about love. It was about leverage. Sandra recognized that Matthew could be dangerous, but she was in denial. Any fear that she did possess was overridden by her desire to have a life with a person who she believed cared about her. Now moving to my final thoughts. Matthew bears the blame in this situation. Sandra may have provoked him through blackmail, but Matthew's behavior set this catastrophe in motion. His continued relationship with her after the initial offenses reinforced and increased the amount of damage that was done, ensuring it was irreparable. Sandra never really had a chance to escape his grip. Through the police explorers, Sandra sought to join with the authorities, but was only offered an unholy union. The love that she craved was transformed into the chains that bound her. She thought she could turn the tables on her oppressor, only to find out the depth of his depravity. The case against Matthew is documented not only in ink, but in the tears of a woman who never truly learned what it meant to be free. Those are my thoughts on the case of Matthew Farwell and Sandra Birchmore. Please put any opinions and thoughts in the comment section. They consistently generate an interesting dialogue. As always, I hope you found my analysis of this topic to be informative. Thanks for watching.